It's a fun thing to get new toys. The Chiefs have done that. New pass rusher, an emerging wide receiver, probably a new punt returner. And what that does to the roster is a conversation we're going to have tonight. There's a lot of new. How does that all boil down as they get ready to enter the preseason? We're going to see that in about a week. I'm kind of excited about it. I don't know about you guys, but we're going to talk about all that and more with what's going on with Seth and the Real Minnesota Chiefs fan blog, Chief in the North. It's tonight on RGR Football. I'm starting everything with this layover lately because time to believe, folks. Training camp is on fire. It's going like I don't know what's going to happen next because there's so many new things going on, but that's where I wanted to start tonight. Seth is here. I'm here. We're going to talk a lot of Chief stuff. How you doing, Seth?
I'm doing well. There is a lot of Chief stuff going on, and we're at that fun time of year where you don't know what's real and what's not, and so everything. Right. I choose to take it all in the most optimistic way possible for the most part. And then eventually, so I do that and I allow myself to enjoy that for a while. And then I look at it realistically. But it's a lot more fun to just be optimistic at first. And so
I like that. I love that attitude.
I'm excited.
Julian, hope you're doing well. Gary's in the house. Brent, Kurt, Britton, welcome. New member there. I like that. Britt, I hope you got my email. Let's see. We got some questions, folks. We will take questions later in the show, but we're going to start off with where we're at. Terry Mitchell, how are you? Robert, how are you? Glad to see you guys all joining. We're going to get off. The topic I wanted to hit at is it's nice to see the new shiny things come in town.
Yes.
But this preseason reminds me more of like actual opportunity to see the shiny things pay off than maybe we've seen in the last couple of years. Does that ring true with you? Like Carlos and Skyy in particular are two guys that I feel are more legit than maybe some of the late additions we've seen over the last couple of seasons.
I mean, I think so. I mean, that's the general idea. And even all the additions, period. In previous years, they weren't quite as reliant on the draft. And so, some of their new additions were guys maybe you didn't see a ton of in the preseason because, they're veterans and that kind of stuff. Whereas this year, you've got so many young guys that I think you're going to get more of a chance to see in the preseason because they're going to get those snaps because the Chiefs know about as much as you and I know about what those guys will look like in live snaps against other NFL players. Now, they know more. They're seeing stuff at training camp and that kind of thing. But training camp reps, that's one reason why I do think preseason is important, at least for like younger guys. Every single stage of this is like a ramping up in the difficulty level, in the realism, in the speed, all of that stuff. And preseason is kind of like, it really is a very glorified, very realistic practice. And that's where you are going to be going against guys who are going 100% because you can't really not go 100% when you're on an NFL field. That's a great way to get hurt.
Yeah. Right.
And so it's I'm excited for it. Because there are guys now, because like the thing for me that gets exciting for preseason is to look for traits and to look at individualized matchups. And so like right now, I cannot wait to see Skyy Moore against NFL corners, in a non-controlled environment. Well, I mean, every game is a controlled environment technically, but seeing just a little more like his releases look insane.
Right.
And
so you're not buying the what he's doing against DeAndre Baker is going to live up. Is that what you're saying?
Well, not just against Baker. I mean, I've watched it against various guys where, because some of the things, you get these. Now, the problem is it's a total of maybe a dozen video clips.
Yeah. True.
So who's to say? But it is, regardless of who the competition is, bursting out of your stance and into your route. And that first probably 2 steps. That first 2 steps, however you make it, whether you're faking one way and going another, whether you're stutter stepping and go, because maybe then I guess maybe you count it as 3 steps, boom, boom, go. how fast you can do that has a disproportionate impact on the rest of the route. You know, if you're a guy who can get even in those first 2 steps,
then
you're kind of cooking with gas. You give yourself this automatic advantage. And right now, he looks like that. But I want to see it in game action. And that's where I'm just excited for that. You know, you got a bunch of guys that when you've got younger players, you know, what does it look like when the bullets really start to fly? But in every phase of this happens. What do they look like in non-padded practices in training camp? Then there's a big jump to padded practice. Then there's another big jump to preseason. And you can tell a fair amount, like preseason football I wrote a couple of years ago. It was one of the early articles I wrote for the newsletter, was like kind of when you know, kind of about certain players. And it was a fun thing to write. I meant to do it more often, but I only ended up doing it the one time. And I wrote about Chris Jones, Justin Houston, and Travis Kelce. Because all 3 of them, it was preseason, where I was like, nope, we're good. This is fine. Like with Mahomes, he showed a fair amount in the preseason, but he wasn't really unleashed till that Denver game. Like I'd seen enough, but like the Denver game was really like, you know, this is gonna whatever.
Yeah.
But like, it really was like I still remember Travis Kelce's first big play. It was a preseason game, like a 50+ yard touchdown against the Bengals, where he just took, it was over the middle of the field, and he just housed it, just outran every corner and safety. And I remember watching Chris Jones the first few snaps in preseason, seeing that uncommon strength that he had, that he showed off in college, seeing that translate against NFL quality opponents. And, you know, same with Justin Houston, you could really see it right away early with him. So that's what I'm excited about with preseason, because you get to see those traits.
Apologies, I'm evidently having a couple of issues here, fading in and out. I didn't hear all of that at the end, but I'm with you. Like the traits show up later down and they're the building blocks, the sugar cubes then grow into that huge crystal structure that you grew in high school, right? Like that's what the candy becomes when the season goes on. I'm pretty excited about a lot of the little things, but it is like for Carlos Dunlap, he doesn't have to be all world. He has to be what he's been. And this will take the icing on the cake up to the next level. That should be enough to get Patrick and the offense over the hump of losing Hill and making the adjustment and changing the offense, which I think if you guys missed it, Gary McKenzie did a great piece here earlier in the week on Tuesday. Go back and watch that, because it really is about the fact that the secret weapon is much like when Patrick took over the team, is defenses right now don't know exactly what they're going to get. They think they're going to see this. We think they're going to see this, but they could twist all of that. Andy's not going to show you in a typical training camp practice all of his little tweaks that are really going to add up to what the offense becomes. So I do think there's a lot more upside, and the little things come from that. Carlos will be the icing on the cake for the defense. I'm really impressed with Skyy Moore, how, especially like when a rookie gets hurt, even banged up enough to leave a practice, it's rare that he comes right back in the next day. You know what I mean? Like the team's usually more cautious. The player's usually a little overwhelmed. Like I see that as a really good sign as well. Yeah. And guys, don't worry. I'm seeing your super chats. We are going to get to all of your questions in super chats here later. We just want to finish. Well, super chatters, absolutely. But we wanted to get to all this, and everybody give the RGR crew that's in the chat here a hand. Aaron made it tonight. We have Stevie and Liz is here, and the whole 9 yards. So let me back you up to your theme for the last week. And as you've looked at everything, as you've written, like, what has been your big takeaway, folks? You can subscribe to his work right here.
Sure. So the first thing that I like to talk about when talking about training camp, one of the first things I wrote about is some things matter and some things don't. One-on-one reps, not in pads, receivers against corners. People think that matters so much more. Like everyone kind of intuitively understands O-line, D-line reps, not in pads. It's nice. It's good practice, but that's literally all it's for is practice. You can't really take anything from it. But people assume you can take a lot more from the receivers versus the corners. For one-on-one drills, receivers against corners, it's good practice on various techniques. But defenders will never be at as great a disadvantage as they are on one-on-ones. It's just, you have literally no help. There's not a linebacker kind of hanging out underneath. There's no pass rush. There's no, I mean, it just, there's no safety over the top, literally no help. It's never going to be that bad in the NFL. Even if you are, if they're running the oop-de-oop offense and you're on an island by yourself, there's still some safety over the top, even if it's just single high. And that's a very unlikely scenario at the NFL level. But so those things don't really matter. So I look for, again, it's the trait stuff. And even then, it's about consistency with those things. So like with Skyy Moore, when he had his first good practice, I was like, that's nice. Second, third, fourth, you see the pads come on. It continues a couple times. That's really nice. Juju Smith-Schuster being moved all over the field and being targeted on intermediate and deep routes. That's really good to see. It's really encouraging. It's maybe demonstrative that he can do more than what the Steelers were having him do last year, which makes sense because he's 25.
Right.
Like, he gets talked about like he's washed. Juju, I think he's got an incredible opportunity in front of him because if he has a big year with the Chiefs, and it doesn't even need to be like a monster year, but if he has a big year, let's say he has 1,200 yards and 9 or 10 touchdowns, that dude is going to get paid next year.
Yeah.
He's going to get beyond Christian Kirk money because he's a bigger name and because he's had all pro seasons previously or Pro Bowl seasons. And so if he could get himself one of those $20 million a year deal without any sort of problem with a big year in Kansas City. A monster year in Kansas City, he could start pushing that market. Like he's not going to get, Adams, Hill money, no matter what he does. Well, I mean, that seems pretty much impossible, but he has a huge opportunity in front of him. So those are the things I look for. Those are the things I'm excited about when you see guys stacking good practice on top of good practice. And then kind of just seeing how guys look in terms of being in shape, whatever. Frank Clark stuff, I have no idea what to think about it. I'm writing about whether I think certain story or training camp storylines are real or fantasy. I did it last year. I'm doing it again this year because it's kind of fun.
Good.
And the very first one I'm starting with is the new Frank Clark. And I have no idea what to write yet. I'm just like,
same as old Frank Clark.
Yeah. Do I buy it? Here's what I do know. He's clearly 15 pounds lighter. I mean, like this is not, and his explanation for it. Okay. Maybe he did drop all 15 of those pounds without losing any strength or whatever the poundage amount is. Maybe. And if he recovered a little explosion, he wasn't really a power player last year or the last few years. And so maybe
the only place that I'm concerned about it, and you tell me what you think, is when he digs in against setting the edge, especially if they're trying to do jets or kind of loop around him. And he uses that hip really effectively because he had that bulkier lower end. Right. Without that, skinnier legs take away some of that leverage and that ability to take on that block. And that makes me a little concerned.
Yeah, but run defense doesn't matter. So
shut up. This guy pressing all my buttons.
It matters a little. If it's a 5% reduction in his run defense for a 10% improvement in his pass rush, or even a 5 and 5, I'll take it. Because he was a good run defender last year. He has been a pretty good run defender consistently. He just wasn't winning consistently. It is going to be weird. He looks more explosive off the line in just a few clips, but it's not like I'm hearing anything about him, beating the brakes off of any of the tackles in one-on-one drills. And that was like remember his first year in Kansas City before he got the nerve thing to where his arm wasn't working well, and he was just destroying Eric Fisher in training camp. And to be fair to Eric Fisher, Frank Clark at his peak was the exact type of pass rusher Fish couldn't handle. A strength-based guy with great length who had a couple of good counters and good hand movement. He couldn't deal with those guys. He just wasn't strong enough, right? It just wasn't enough. And so there were Reaper set.
Put together a package for you.
Ooh. There's so
I dare you.
I can't get done doing radio with Briscoe and having you say things like that. Because I'm gonna be like, with Clark, we're not hearing any of this. We're hearing he looks more explosive. But I mean, if he's going to try to transition into a speed rusher, he never really had bend. Right. He had bounce through contact.
True.
So I think he'll be able to crush the pocket and lean on it a little bit. But I mean, so anyway, that's one of the things that stood out to me is all the narratives that are surrounding him. If he could even just be an okay pass rusher consistently, that would mean so much to the Chiefs now that Dunlap's in town. And like you just have one above average pass rusher, one that's even just okay, and Chris Jones. That means so much more than a guy who's above average and Chris Jones and then nothing. We saw what happened at the end of the year last year. Ingram, I've had people ask me what happened to Ingram at the end of last year. Nothing really. He kept playing well. But you can't have two pass rushers unless both of them are utterly elite.
Yeah.
Then you can get by with it, but it's still not ideal. And so that's why, like the Rams, they had other good pass rushers besides Miller and
that guy.
Donald. Wow. I cover the NFL for a living, you see. I don't know, but I mean, have you seen anything that you're just hyped about that I'm missing?
No. The thing that I'm most hyped about, I was just letting you describe it all just so I could just say no.
Wow. Well, okay. I guess we'll be back next week when Ryan's feeling more optimistic.
Someday.
Goodness gracious.
I will say this. I think the one thing that Frank has maintained through his decline was his ability to adjust his pad level. I think he's got a good dip and he understands how to get under when he needs to.
Yeah, he used a ghost move a little more often last year, dipping that shoulder. That was when he was having some success. Mm-hmm. So good point. I'm sorry, you keep talking. I just agree with you so much.
I know, right? Hey, I love it when you do that. My bigger point is that's one thing that's technique based that he can pass on rather readily. And so his newfound attitude and he feels very different to me in the way he's going about this season, in being the mentor, in being the vet. Mm-hmm. And for Karlaftis, who needs every little thing that he can get to overcome being a power first, and sometimes in some games I watch power only pass rusher.
That dude ain't got bend.
No, but if he can get pad level difference, if he can be dynamic in that way and learn that from Frank, that can help him right now, today, this season. And that's what's got me optimistic that while Frank physically may be a little bit more explosive, I hope so, he's able to make a bigger impact on the younger guys that can then bring up the whole of the defensive line. That's what's got me happy.
Right. And for the people because I've seen people kind of dunking on Clark on Twitter, like I saw one of the first replies when it was showing him practicing afterward with Karlaftis was, is he teaching him how to suck, or is he teaching him all those pass rush moves that don't work? Here's what I would say. Frank Clark has been disappointing with the Chiefs by and large. I think he knows that. I mean, well, he said as much. He knew it last year. Yeah. I'm guessing, gun to his head, he would admit it for previous years too. But it's not like him and Karlaftis. There are things that he could teach Karlaftis about learning how to win at the NFL level without bend, because Clark was really, really, really good at it. Now, to be fair, Clark had length that Karlaftis does not have, but they won in some similar ways. If you compare Karlaftis's film from 2021 in college and you look at Clark back in 2018, you'd see some similarities in that they're not trying to bend around the edge. That's not what they do. They don't have the bend for it. And so you find a bunch of other ways. You find how to pass rush with a plan, how to have a couple of primary moves. In Frank Clark's case, it really was that long arm. And then you build counters specifically off of that. And it works. And those are things that he knows how to do. And Carlos Dunlap, again, he's a guy that wins more with length. So Karlaftis is going to have to figure out how to pick and choose here, because he's not going to grow 34.5-inch arms. That's because I think Karlaftis, yeah, he doesn't need to. But Dunlap can teach him about leverage and placement and feel. And those are things that both of those guys can pass on to him as guys who don't. Man, if you watch Carlos Dunlap's 2021 film, the number of times in 6 games he tried to bend around the edge was the same number of times I tried to rush a quarterback by bending around the edge in the NFL last year. That's just Dunlap. You don't enter your 13th year still as a productive player in the NFL by not knowing what you are and what you aren't. And that's what Dunlap brings. So I do think you make a good point. There's a ton of value in that, trying to pass along that knowledge, because Frank Clark is a smart football player. No one that's worked with him disputes that. Yeah. The results haven't been what he's wanted. I really think he's had some significant health stuff. And like for him to acknowledge, like, man, I've had some serious stomach issues, and that can mean anything. That could mean pain. That could mean various forms of indigestion, which, it sounds, almost funny to say it like that. But if you've ever, like, I've had family members that have had really serious stomach issues, and it borderline incapacitated them.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe by cutting out alcohol, I mean, if anything, a grown man who likes to imbibe a little, saying I quit drinking, period. I mean, that shows buy-in, and I think that he brings value with that too, just demonstrating the buy-in and being able to tell a rookie, hey, it's really hard to maintain year to year in this league and game to game. So I think there's a lot of value in it.
Folks, when you look at us, you see one guy that doesn't drink and one guy that drinks too much. So,
well, you see one guy that one guy that doesn't drink because he does drink too much.
Oh, okay. Well, there's that
he
too.
likes it way too much. It's like, and he figured out around 23, this might be a bad idea for me. As I dangled naked from the helicopter. No, that part's not
See,
true.
this is where you make me nervous. Okay. So at the end of the day, it's a group effort. And I think that one of the lessons they've learned from Sizzle first, from Ingram after him, like adding a guy on top of what you feel is your base makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I found it really interesting. And we found out through Matt Derrick today, the Chiefs made their first offer to Carlos Dunlap in May. That's impressive to me because they identified him longer than before you and I started talking about him, which I think was after the draft. But they were on that and they recognized he does what they want him to do. He's a Spags guy. He's not trying to be Von Miller. And that, I think the fit was always there. So I'm glad that it worked out that way.
Yeah.
The thing I found curious, and I want your opinion, is he said they offered him a high volume of snaps. That's what he was looking for. He wanted to play more than his 38. I thought it was 39% that he played last year in Seattle.
Right.
Knowing that they had already drafted Karlaftis, does that give you any concern? Does that mean that, like, I feel that means they're going to play Karlaftis at tackle more than we think? Does that jive with you, or what do you think?
I think it means that Karlaftis is a rookie and Steve Spagnuolo does things a certain way. I think Mike Dana saw the field more than they probably wanted last year. And good on him. He was competent.
Yeah.
And I've heard he's had a good camp so far, which is nice to hear. I think that it means, especially if Andy had a pretty blunt discussion with Clark about how last year was, I think it means that you might see Clark on the field less this year. And I think it means you might see an actual defensive end rotation more similar to what Seattle does. Part of the reason why he didn't see some snaps, there were a couple games where he saw hardly any. Otherwise, he would have been around 50%. So I'm curious if that's what he means, more like 50, 60%. And as a veteran that actually, you got to be careful. You don't want to get wore out. But that tends to help guys, especially guys that win like this, like Dunlap does, because you can spend a tired game setting guys up and kind of getting a feel. And that's something he does.
Sean, you made me stop midstream. That almost never happens. Wow. And Adam, don't worry. I'm going to get to all the questions. They're just stacking up. We'll get to them.
We'll let them stack. Don't worry, Adam. It's going to be all right. So I do think that, sorry, that just distracted me so much. I'm curious. They said that to him. I think what you're going to see is some guys moving inside at times. I think Karlaftis can do it. I kind of liked his snaps inside in college just because he's explosive. He's more explosive than people think because they hear lack of bend and they hear that he's not a speed rusher and they assume that he doesn't have a great first step. One thing he shares with Clark, in terms of Clark's early success, is that he had a really good first step for a power-based rusher. Most power-based rushers didn't quite have that kind of first step. And that allowed him to close distance quickly and utilize his length and stuff. But it also is one of the reasons why he can move inside and it doesn't hurt him as much because you don't need bend as much from the inside as you need bounce through contact. And Karlaftis has bounce through contact. And so I could see them doing that. And really, what maybe you might see more of this year is I think I'm curious what it means more so for Saunders and Wharton than anything else. Like on third downs, you might maybe see more just like Jones, Karlaftis, Dunlap, and Clark. Whereas last year, you would have seen Jones, Ingram, Clark, and Wharton usually. And I could see that on obvious passing downs. And if you do that right there, you've created a situation. Ooh, nice. You've created a situation. And well, I want to hear you explain this because I need people to explain things to me like I'm 5.
I'm just tying into your point.
Yeah, no, I know, but I want people to understand it too. That Karlaftis is more athletic than people give him credit for.
Let me show you a couple of things. Seth, keep explaining, but this bear rate is what I use for how a guy makes a play either at or behind the line of scrimmage in a place where he's one-on-one and actually affects the quarterback stance, so that it does include pressures, and how many times he makes collisions. This is the bear rate for the last draft class. Number 2 in this particular metric is George Karlaftis, right behind the guy that went, 5th overall to the Giants. That's impressive. Pressure rate overall, George, top 10. It's about finishing for Karlaftis because that's what you got to see here. And that goes exactly towards what you were talking about. This is the explosion ranking down here in the orange. 12th in the class. That's including guys like Amari Barno that are 45 pounds lighter than him.
Right. Those are guys who are pure third down only in a 34 edge rushers.
Exactly.
And so he's a better athlete than people give him credit for. He's got better change of direction than people give him credit for. In terms, and now that doesn't, he's not Willie Gay Jr. out there.
Right.
Like, almost no one is. Willie Gay Jr. is an unbelievable athlete. He's borderline a safety in a linebacker's body. He's a freak. Yeah. So, but with Karlaftis, he changes direction. He's more explosive than people expect. So I think moving him inside, that means the bend doesn't matter as much. And being a guy with some power, some technique, and some explosion does. And so I think you can move him inside. I think he's a better fit inside than Dunlap. Although Dunlap can do it, he just didn't do it much in Seattle. He did it more in Cincinnati, but it's still not really his jam. But he can do it with where his length can matter. But I think Karlaftis is comfortable in there. I just think it's probably going to be more for a third down type thing because otherwise you do run into some issues, and if it's like, even if it's like, 2nd and 7, I don't know if you want to move George Karlaftis inside and see if he can handle a double team from a center and a guard.
Absolutely. Because he does have a tendency, or at least he did in college, to get a little bit high, especially against the run.
Yep.
Because he has that first step, and quite frankly, his lower body catches up to his upper body pretty quickly. Yeah. And I think that's going to be a training thing that he will grow out of eventually. But you have a very good point. Like, trying to take on doubles is going to be tough for him. He didn't see that a whole lot in college. So
right. And you don't draft a guy in the first round at edge to line him up inside constantly and have him, defend the run. Derek Notty's very competent at that. I mean, he's a block eater and he's good at it. And so I do think that adding Dunlap, I think I see more of, people talk about NASCAR packages and that kind of stuff, but it's really just having your 4 best pass rushers on the field, provided you have guys that can rush from the inside. Clark can do it a little. Dunlap can do it a little less, but he can do it. And Karlaftis might be, of the 3 of them, the best fit for it. And so he can do it. And then Jones, everyone calm down, from the edge occasionally as a mix-up when it's just a pass rushing down.
Right.
Not when you think he's going to have to handle an option. Like, I don't know who thought that was a good idea against the Ravens. Like, to have him, and maybe they were trying to prove a point to him.
Maybe, because he's about this tall. His name's Spags.
Yeah. I just, that to me, of course, Chris Jones, who's a great athlete for an interior defensive lineman, but he's not a guy, regular edge rushers, athletic edge rushers can't handle Lamar Jackson with the read option.
Yeah.
But anyway, you can put Jones occasionally at the edge just for purposes of moving, knowing he's just going to try to crush inside. I like the idea of the 4 of them being on the field for obvious passing downs. And I think, as much as I like him, and I wish he'd shown more than just the flashes, and maybe we'll see more this year. We'll see with Wharton. Because with Wharton, I can't figure out, well, I think I can, but It's unfortunate that he hasn't really developed as a pass rusher. He's still a guy that will give you maybe 1 or 2 really good wins a game.
Yeah.
Where he just shakes the offensive lineman and he's just too athletic. And he is strong through contact, but he just has not his hand usage, and we'll see what Cullen can do with him. But I like the idea of those guys. I like the idea of having maybe 4 pass rushers that you can trust. If Clark can just be competent, and we'll see what Karlaftis can do.
I think his presence, as well as all the rookies in the secondary, I think 2 guys that I feel can make a push to improve. Wharton's one of them. I feel like he so far I've seen multiple instances where he strung more pass rush moves together. He's playing against better competition. I think he's rotating in better at a higher level against ones. That makes me comfortable. The other guy's L'Jarius Sneed. Like, they both had kind of even sophomore years, and now I think they're primed for a climb. So those 2 guys to watch, folks. If you are new to us, I haven't done this yet, but you want to subscribe to the channel. If you dig what we're doing, this is only part of what we do here on the channel. This is Thursday Night with Seth, whether it's called Chief in the North or Seth is throwing stuff at me. You never know what it's going to be. But this is Thursday Night with Seth. So you want to subscribe to this. You want to get the bell clicked so you know when it happens again, and all kinds of other stuff, because I have a couple of new wrinkles coming for you. If you've seen the highlight packages, I've started using some of those. You're going to see some excerpts from of our lives. If you can't get to them, some of the better points, you'll see those on replay as individual videos as well. But hit the like as well. That helps us get this one out. The sub, the bell, it all goes together. Grab some gear in the RGR store. That helps us as well. If you want to support us, the super chats are the way to do it. That's super easy. That's why they call them super. And you can do that on replay as well. There's super thanks there in the button. But at this point, we're going to move over to your questions.
Oh, boy.
And if you did super chat, you will get an answer. We'll try to answer a bunch of others in between as well. So let's start, because Teak gave us one earlier. Pacheco's rumored to be CEH's replacement. I saw him in camp, and he is really that big and fast in pads, like scary fast with power. And Teak, I stacked you up first because I wanted to show you guys another instance of what he really is. And that's describing athletically what he can do. A lot of people, there's a new comparison to Kareem Hunt. I want you to see this, because this is the way that Pacheco stacked up. And let me get some of the things out of the way here, because there's just too much covering it. This is what Pacheco offers in these 2 categories in particular that the Chiefs haven't had in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire star map here looks a lot more square. And that's because he doesn't have the short area quickness as well as the breakaway speed. That's what the XPR is. That is his explosive range. There's only been one back in Kansas City that has been more explosive on this ranking than him. And it is none other than Seth's favorite player, Jamal Charles. So I get the fact that folks are fired up, but it's not a 1-to-1 for me with Kareem Hunt. Yes, he plays with some power, but you see here, power is not his game. It is about making a step and exploding downrange. That's right. What it is. The contact thing is really interesting, because the other thing that Pacheco excelled in college was yards after contact. And I want to get back to that, because here's where it is. His ranking at number 6 in the class was really impressive. But he's not alone, because the guy at the top of this list is also on this Chiefs roster, in Jerry and Ely. So these are 2 guys that, as the next evolution of the running back room, can bring more explosion and more agility to get out of the way and get yards after contact. Not in the way that Kareem Hunt did, but in a similar production value after the fact. It's about how you get there. And so I just wanted to reset everybody's expectations, because it's not as straightforward as it seems. It's not a CH replacement or a Kareem Hunt replacement. It's not 1-to-1, but it definitely offers some new surprises.
And I think, with Pacheco, I think some of that yards after contact, because he's an explosive runner, he would be, on the times where he did break tackles, might gain a ton of yards. But he's not like Kareem Hunt's power through contact is really genuinely special. It's hard to find guys that slide off contact and keep churning through it the way he does. And so that's a dangerous thing to do. Although Pacheco's a pretty decently sized back, and he is explosive. He's just going to be, based on what I saw, he's not particularly his change of direction within the phone booth isn't something that you're going to write home about. And so he's going to be a little more kind of a one cut and go, kind of dependent on his blocking guy, but he might make more out of his blocking than other guys on the roster because of that explosion.
Yeah.
That 1/10 of a second matters. And so I really did like him. I might, at some point, maybe I'll unlock his film review that I did after the Chiefs drafted him and talk about some of that stuff, because he really does bring a skill set that I think they're trying to get with Ronald Jones, with some of that explosion. I think they definitely did notice that they were missing it a little bit from Clyde. Although from everything I hear, Clyde's having a really great camp.
Yep.
We'll see. We'll see if he can stay healthy.
I heard this song before.
Yep.
Ruben, are you both seeing the very same attitude with the Chiefs that they had last year, or the year when they won the Super Bowl in Miami? I see great things with their attitude and approach to the game this camp. It seems fairly consistent to me.
Yeah, Andy Reid is almost legendary at this point for being the same guy all the time, every year. I don't think their attitude and approach is necessarily ever. I don't think it's ever necessarily really fallen off. I don't think they lost last year because of attitude and approach. I think Mahomes picked a really bad time to play a crappy half of football, and Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill both lost 50-50 passes that they really should have come down with.
Agreed.
Yeah, and the defense was not fast enough to prevent some explosive plays. And sometimes it really is that simple, against the Bucs in the Super Bowl the year before, they made it to the Super Bowl. Any time you make it to the Super Bowl, you have the right approach. Sometimes you just run into a really good team that happens to really have a strong strength right where your weakness is, and there's just not much you can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what roster building is about, to try to get rid of those holes so that you're at least serviceable in all areas, especially on the defensive side. Right. Eric wants to know, what are your top 5 fringe players that may or may not make the roster? Here, I'll go first. We'll just alternate. Okay. I think that as the injuries mount at the wide receiver spot, I think Coleman is a guy that might be on the fringe now that Watson and Fountain were thought to be 5 and 6, but Fountain got hurt yesterday. Let's see what happens. So everybody moves up a notch every time somebody misses significant practice time.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think one guy that no one's talking about, but he is a veteran with a lot of playing experience, Deion Bush as safety. I think, he's kind of a fringe guy, especially after all the youth movement. But I think with the amount of youth movement they did, he might be a good player to keep around.
Yeah, especially for teams, right? Like that makes a lot of sense. Another guy that I would say is probably not fringe as much as we may have thought, and that is Roderick Johnson. I think they do want to swing tackle specifically. I don't think you necessarily think Kennard is that. They've given him a couple looks at left, but I think he's a right tackle at this point. So I think he's got himself a path to the roster pretty easily.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good one. I'm trying to think. I'm looking through a few guys. In terms of guys that are definitely fringy. I'm not going to give a specific name here, but they have too many offensive linemen. Like when you name Johnson and you name a few, I mean, they have too many.
Yeah.
Someone's going to get cut that fans are not expecting just because you run out of bodies eventually, or you run out of roster spots. And you got too many bodies, which is a good problem to have, especially once they trade, a conditional 6 for Tevin Jenkins.
Right. Exactly. I'm not condoning that. I'm saying there will be a trade because a lot of teams are having injuries along the offensive line. The Chiefs do have a plethora. So I think there could be a trade in the future. Don't say Tevin Jenkins on my show again, please.
Wow.
Dan was super high on him. Dan is really disappointed with his development at this point. I am really not surprised. So we'll just put it that way.
Derek Gore would be a guy to name that was a fan favorite last year, that just with McKinnon coming on, the fact that they like Clyde, they brought in Jones, they drafted Pacheco. It's tough. The good news for Gore is that he's had some competent carries at the pro level. He's stuck with a team for a couple of years. That makes your path to get signed to another team significantly easier.
Absolutely. Julian, nice to see you back. As the season goes along, whose side will the offensive line start sliding towards? Towards Jones and Dunlap or towards Clark?
Always Jones. I mean,
yeah, I don't think it's whether Dunlap or Clark are next to Frank or next to Chris or not.
Yeah. It's just going to matter where Chris Jones is. I mean, barring Clark, like seeing like a return to like his 2018 form, which would be amazing. That'd be incredible. But I mean, Jones is the sun around which all of the Chiefs defense orbits.
Yeah. Judge, thank you for the support. We appreciate you, folks. That's a super chat. You can do that as well. Thanks for doing it, Judge. I'm completely beaten down by the Orlando Brown Jr. talk. Give me anything else. Thanks. Well, here's for you, Judge. We hadn't mentioned him until right now. I don't blame you.
Okay. I'm sorry, Judge. We've given you 42 minutes of what you asked for. He looks kind of svelte.
Svelte. I like that. I got called that once. She married me.
She
Sports
lied, bro.
Yeah, she did. That was back in the day. Hey,
yeah, sure.
Sports Illustrated and CBS Sports stopped in St. Joe for camp tour, and both know that they were impressed with Pacheco. You believe the hyper is he Niles Davis all over again. I can't tell you because I haven't seen him in person, but I will tell you from what I saw in his film, I don't think he beats out Rojo. I don't think he beats out McKinnon. The Chiefs put a heavy emphasis on having that veteran presence. Obviously, no one's beating out CEH until he gets hurt. But I do think his return ability is going to get him onto this roster. And then I think he has a better path to development than Niall did. So it's a good comparison, Micah, but I feel a little more optimistic than that. I'm like Seth was when the show started.
Yeah, Niall Davis is a good example of being such a physical specimen that you're able to hang in the NFL for multiple years despite not developing in certain areas. Like Niall Davis was just a freak, man, physically.
Yeah. I mean, and that one kick return, that a big back with speed makes you remember, I think whether subconsciously or not, I think a lot of people do remember that. So
yep.
It does feed into the concept there. Another one from Micah. Great pod. Thank you, sir. Only 7 teams hosted away camp away from their practice facility. I read offsite camps cost teams $100,000 per week. Will all the teams soon host camp at home? I don't think so. This is a coaching decision, really. Andy likes to get away because it isolates the players and lets them concentrate. He speaks about this every year in that they get their huddle and their circle that much tighter, and he feels that helps forge a team in August. I don't think they're ever going to go away from that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I know, well, as long as Andy Reid's the coach, I'd be shocked because I think he really believes in this process. And I mean, $100,000 a week, the team, I mean, they sell tickets, they do all sorts of things with the offsite thing. It surprised me if the Chiefs were losing money on it.
Yeah,
any more so than they would just doing it where they are.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's about capacity at that point. Teak, thank you for the support. Appreciate you, buddy. Hit the thumbs up if you think Patrick LaVon, Showtime Mahomes is Derek Carr's daddy. I hope he did not create that guy. He is a lot older than him. So that would be like a time travel kind of situation that I'm not prepared to delve into. But thanks, Teak. And thank you, Stevie, folks. Watch Stevie and the boys over on Back Talk Bros and on here on the Rogue Head Huddle. What are the positives for Cornell Powell that might lead one to believe that he makes the 53? 3 guys in front of him have gotten hurt.
If one were to go back to his college film, he looks like a guy with really reliable hands, a guy who runs decent routes. You combine those two things, you can make something happen at the NFL level. But that hasn't quite presented itself yet. I think there's some physical limitations there for him in terms of explosiveness that might put a cap there. Think Byron Pringle, but maybe more. Because I think Pringle's quicker.
Yeah, I tend to think so as well. I mean, the only positive that I can really see is that he seems to be connecting some dots and being where he's supposed to be a little bit more often. So if it gets down to it, nutrition could be his friend. Rob, do Chiefs improve in red zone defense and points allowed, given that they seem to go get some aggressive tacklers, i.e. Cook, Chanel, and Reed? In the end, for me, red zone's about study. Red zone's about quick hitting plays that you understand are coming and reading the signs before they happen. I don't know that it's an effort thing or an ability to anchor or anything like that. I don't know how you feel, Seth.
I would say they could, but I think it's more like when you're looking at Cook, Chanel, and Reed, I don't think Cook or Chanel is necessarily going to be terribly helpful in the red zone. Other than, some power type stuff. I just don't think he's going to have as big a role as people expect. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they end up plugging him on the edge sometimes, and maybe he shows more coverage ability than what I think he has right now. But I think he's a guy, like, you'll notice whenever you hear his name, it's in the run game drills. And he's a good athlete, really good athlete, but his change of direction just isn't quite what you want. So I would say they might be better in the red zone, but I wouldn't say it's because they've got aggressive tacklers. I would say it's because they've got better sideline to sideline speed. And that's something that bit them a few times in the red zone and beyond last year. That was the problem they had with big plays sometimes, is they just did not have the guys that could get to the sideline in time.
I think probably the biggest upgrade for that right now is it looks like Willie has put together all of his keys and triggers, and he's actually playing quick.
Gay and Bolton being on the field all the time would be a very good thing.
Yeah. Austin, who do you see as the 6th wide receiver making the roster now? I still think it's Fountain, depending on this injury. If Fountain misses 2 preseason games, it's hard and he won't make the club. But I would think he and Watson are probably the guys right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Gordon he needed, I think, a good camp.
Yeah, he's fading, it seems like.
Yep.
That's all right. Hey, age catches up with all of us. I ran out of talent, after high school. Bill, hope you're doing well. Is Pacheco hype real? Yeah, we talked about that. The tweets from Breer. I didn't see Breer's tweets, but
he really liked him. That's one of the things I'm going to address. There's a possibility. One thing with running backs, you really don't know how they're going to acclimate to the pro level until they hit the pro level. And Pacheco's a guy that I think plays a little faster in pads than you might see in shorts. But I just, it really is one of those things. We'll see what it looks like in live game action. His particular brand of athleticism and physicality might stand out a little more in practice than it does during games.
Could be. And I will say this. The thing that Breer did say in his piece was that the team feels that comparison to Hunt is real. And in the end, that's what matters. So,
yeah.
Thank you, William. Appreciate you. Jason, content is great, but content from people that really enjoy the game is much better. Thanks for all the great content. Excited to go through the season with you guys. Glad you're here, Jason. We appreciate your time and being with us. Micah, you got another good one. I looked ahead to week 1. Arizona defense looks weak besides the currently lining up at ILB, Simmons, and safety Buda Baker. Thoughts on Arizona defense this year? They drafted some good quality, low-cost edges. I like both those guys. Cam Thomas is there, and so is that kid from Cincinnati that everyone wanted to write off. So I think they'll come along. It just ain't this season. Pacheco looks like an athletic freak. Absolutely.
Man, I need to unlock this Pacheco article.
You do. Reality is on film, folks, and just see it. Seth will show you. Dean, thank you very much. The franchise is back, but y'all are more important. Thank you, Dean. Appreciate that. Franchise will be here when we're done, I promise. It's different to be here with us, so thank you. Jason, what would you say are the 3 things that the team needs to do this year for Chiefs to win the Super Bowl? It is to officially and completely move to this new offensive paradigm of distributing the ball again, like Patrick did when he was first starting. And not looking for the deep shot so much. It is about shoring up the pass rush in order to affect the opposing quarterback. And what do you got, Seth?
Oh, that they need to do. I think, the spreading the ball out. They need some of their wide receiver depth to show up the way that they're hoping it will. Mm-hmm. Like you said, I would say they also need at least one guy, one of their new young guys, to really step up in the secondary. Because, let's say Juan Thornhill and Justin Reed be what they've been throughout their pro careers. Let's say Snead and Fenton be what they've been throughout their pro careers. You need at least one guy to step up in a pretty big way, whether it's McDuffie or Williams, or even Brian Cook.
Yep. Just take the ball away. Aaron, thank you for popping this in there. Adam asked, great show. I'm with Jeff Pauls. What are the negatives you are seeing at camp? Outside of Trey Smith, I'm not seeing a whole lot of physicality. But I will say that is largely a coaching issue and trying to avoid injuries and trying to keep that part of it dialed down. If we don't see that in the 2 preseason games to start, then I'll start to be really concerned.
Sure. I suppose you're not really hearing anything about training camp becoming testy or any kind of,
Right.
really hardcore. I know Jones and Smith have really been battling it out. Sometimes I wonder if when you have a team where so much is defined and so much is kind of set in place, that there are some battles for positioning, but there's not really battles for positions.
Right.
Even the running back room, everyone knows it's going to be probably the majority Clyde, barring him giving it away. With the receiver group, there's some unknowns there, but you're seeing some pretty clear trends emerging that they really are going to give significant playing time to the first 4 guys, barring them just this all being a joke with Skyy Moore.
Right.
It looks like those first 4 guys are going to get a lot of snaps, plenty of targets. So there's really not a lot of competition there because there are plenty of targets to go around and specific roles to fill.
Yeah.
So I just, you want to see physicality, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what that first preseason game looks like with regards to that. In terms of anything negative I've seen, I'm hearing some hype about the young defensive guys, but I don't know if it's the type that makes me really I don't know if it really gets me excited for what they're going to do, or if it's been kind of an individual play here, an individual play there. Boy,
Yeah.
that guy looks athletic. Things like that just don't really do it for me. It's actually one of the things that I was going to talk about, real or fantasy, the hype on the young defensive players. I don't know. We're hearing about how hard Karlaftis is working. We're not really hearing about him dominating in a way that you'd hope.
Yep.
If he was going to come out of the gate strong. But, again, we'll know a lot more about these guys after the first preseason game.
Just remember, folks, when I told you the guy that has the biggest impact as a rookie is Brian Cook. He's not being hyped up now, but from what I understand, he is in position constantly and doing his job as a rookie. That's significant.
That's a big deal.
L. Hill, Chiefs would have run the ball in the AFC Championship. I believe they would have been playing in the Super Bowl. Do you think that they'll run more this year? I actually do. They won't run enough for me, but I think they will run more than they have in the past. Maybe an uptick of 3 or 4 carries a game. And I think that might be enough to make a difference. I'd rather see, 6 to 8, but that's fine. What do you think, Seth?
I think they will run a little more.
Okay.
Although, again, let's say Skyy Moore is what they thought he was and Juju is what they think is, then they're probably not going to. Because they'll have the deepest wide receiver core they've had since 2018. Yeah. And so they're going to throw it all over the yard.
That's fair. Chiefs joined the stream a little late. Is it a good or bad thing that Dunlap said that he's getting first, that he's looking to get first and second? Neither. It's interesting that the Chiefs seem to be okay with that, but until it happens, it's him saying it isn't really anything. Any player wants to play more. That's pretty normal. Stevie, thank you. Sean T, I'll see what I can do for a Seth t-shirt. Oh yeah, I have one that's ready to come off the presses. I am looking at building a new store, folks, because I just got something kind of cool laid out. So hopefully we'll have some new gear, including hats and some of the things that have been bugging me for a while. But yeah, if you come up with something, Stevie, send it to me and I'll try to get that loaded. I have a couple of plans as well. So Spards, thank you for the support. With Carlos' statement as the pressure about higher percentage of snaps and Frank's mention of Karlaftis on the inside, do you think the starting D-line will be those 3 and Jones? I don't think you start Karlaftis at tackle.
No.
Okay.
No, definitely not. You can't. I mean, you just can't start a guy that weighs 260 pounds at defensive tackle. No, that'll be, you got your nickel looks, your nickel and dime looks, and then your obvious passing down looks. And your obvious passing downs, you might be really similar in terms of personnel, like dime, to what you might show on second and long. But up front, it's going to look a little bit different.
Yeah. I'd like you to take a stab at this one. Stat projection for Jody Fortson if he stays healthy all year.
And if he stays healthy all year.
Right.
I think if he stays healthy all year, something around 30 to 35 catches, about 350 to 400 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Quite a few touchdowns. I think he'd get those red zone things. He's got really, really, really secure hands. And so I think he'll get some of those kind of cheap touchdowns, but where it's like we want to make sure there's a guy that just clamps onto it.
I'm with you, but I say he breaks 500 yards.
Ooh.
Is it going to be Gay, Nick Bolton, and Elijah, the linebacker core starters? In the base, that's what it looks like right now.
Mm-hmm.
And Chanel as in spot duty. If they get a team that runs a lot, they play the Titans, Chanel's going to start. He's going to come downhill, and they're going to use him to full effect. But I think you're right, Mr. Phil. I think it's generally going to be Elijah as it stands right now. Watson Williams both running the first team this week. So do you put stock into it, or is it because they know what they have from Lonnie and Fenton is currently hurt? It's definitely because Fenton is currently hurt. I'm perplexed by Lonnie Johnson.
I don't even
Williams.
know.
Go ahead.
Who's Johnson been running with the second team, third team?
He was running with the threes and crushing dudes just until like 2 days ago. And now I guess he got snaps yesterday and today with the twos.
So they might be working his way into it.
Yeah.
Just maybe that's one way of dealing with a guy that was drafted kind of high. It didn't work out well in that first place. Is really like, hey, just so you know, this is how this works. You start at the bottom now. And if you impress us, because Johnson's got a lot of talent.
Mm-hmm.
And so that running with the twos, I do think a little more what you have in Johnson. And so I don't read too much into running with the twos. It is a little weird that it's not him automatically with Fenton out.
Right.
But I wouldn't read too much into it at this point. With the ones and twos stuff, it does matter at this point in camp. It does matter, but it matters way more in 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. That's when it'll come to call. I will say Williams has more upside. Watson, I think, has farther to go to get proficient, but I liked him a lot. I had him as easily a draftable grade, so I think he's got the potential.
Mm-hmm.
Britton, not a question, but wanted to say love the increased production value with the visual aids. Yeah, it's tough on the live streams. I usually have something prepared every live stream and never get to it, so it all depends on the question. So I'll try to keep that in mind a little bit more. Rather than the prepared videos, which we always have, visuals and film and that stuff. Mr. Phil, do you think Andy will ever get that killer instinct in him? No. Andy is a finished product. He's not going to run out the clock by running it up or anything like that in his future. He is who he is. Corey Coleman has a legit chance to make the roster. I think now he does, especially if Fountain misses any increased time. I think that helps his chances.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How is Mike Rose look?
Trying to unlock the Isaiah Pacheco article.
Cool. We still have like over 20 stacked and we have 4 minutes. So
let's do this.
Some of these while you're doing it.
I'm listening.
How has Mike Rose looked and do you see him making the roster? I hear that he's looked all right, but I hear Jermaine Carter has moved in front of him versus OTAs where he was clearly getting more snaps. Mike is on the bubble and I'm pulling for him, but he will definitely be practice squad eligible and somebody that they will keep around because Carter, Elijah, they're both up there in age and they want to find a full-time pass-specific replacement to play with Nick and Willie in the future until Chanel can come along. So I do think there's an option there.
Yep.
Brian, any chance Ely takes the wide receiver 6 spot? Not sure if he has any special teams experience. He does have return experience. Mm-hmm. I can't see him taking the wide receiver 6 spot though. Can you?
Yeah, I don't see them doing that. I know they list him as a running back / wide receiver, but I don't see it.
I think he's destined for the practice squad and will be a call-up situation. I mean,
I think so too.
I think he's somewhere between Dat and Dexter McCluster personally. And I think that has a place, but this roster is really tough to squeeze that onto.
Yeah.
Damian, Howard Pacheco's hands. Up and down. For the most part, it's been up in this camp from what I understand. There was a few drops in college, but, we'll see how he's making the adjustment. Jaden,
yeah.
Go ahead.
In college, he wasn't asked to do a ton there. His hands looked fine, but he wasn't asked to do anything difficult with them. He could catch the ball when he was the dump off option, and if he had room, he'd run.
Yeah, I don't think he got enough volume to get really proficient, to tell you the truth.
For sure. Solid in pass pro though.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually one of the things. As I get this going, he is really solid in pass pro in college. Was asked to do a lot of it, and he did it well. That's actually one of the things when I said he's got 2 traits that help rookies get on the field. And one of them is
that's one of them. That's awesome. Jaden, thank you for the support. How likely is the end of the season the Chiefs can finish in the top 15 in the league in defense? And how likely is it that Isaiah Pacheco 10 can take HP1? Isaiah will not take the number one running back role. That will not happen in 2022.
Yeah. He would have to, I mean, he'd have to look. It would have to be like
he'd have to be
Kareem
Jamal
Hunt-ish, Jamal Charles-ish. It would have to be so unbelievably, impossibly apparent. And even then, he'd probably split time with CEH.
Probably.
That's Andy, man.
And this is going to launch our renewed conversation of why you never draft a running back in the first round, folks, because a 7th rounder might be just as good, if not better.
Yep.
Oh, I'm not going to get into that conversation tonight. That's going to make me mad. The other one is, Jaden, I think top 15 is probably the ceiling for this defense. I'd be very happy if they get above 20 in most categories. That would make me ecstatic. I dance a jig, and I can't dance. You guys probably already guessed that. Do you think the speed practices helps the Chiefs get up to a faster start than other teams? I think it does sometimes. I also think that Andy is running shorter practices this year for a reason, because I think he's ground down a couple of the rosters recently since the Super Bowl. And with the super long seasons, I think he's taking it easier on them this season. And I hope that that helps as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that. I really do.
My attorney concurs, so we're moving on. Corbin, thank you for the support. Appreciate you. First time, long time. Needed to ask. Pick any past year to win the Super Bowl, but you have to give up 2020s. P.S. Apple Pods get updated. When will Apple Pods get updated? The RGR show hits usually a few hours after the show goes live. It's all automated, so it takes a little bit. Chief show should be up now. Any year, pick any past year to win the Super Bowl, but you have to give up 2020.
I'd keep the year they won it. It was amazing. Like, I don't think any other year would have been better.
When was the last year that Jamal and Barry were on the roster at the same time?
Barry, because Jamal, I think the last year was on the roster was 2016. I still remember when the Chiefs weren't able to designate him to return. That is the last time, other than the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, which is a very different experience. That was the last time I cried over football, because I knew it meant the Chiefs were going to be releasing him. My kids were with me when I read it, and that's probably part of it. When you're on your kids, more of a sap. But I mean, I literally cried because that meant my kids, because they never saw him live. And I thought they'd maybe be able to see it later that year, like in the playoffs or something. And that bummed me out so much.
That's tough.
Yeah,
I don't recall crying over football in quite a while, so maybe I'm just dead inside. It's okay. Corbin, thank you for the support. What do you think of the chances of beating the Cardinals in first week? 90%.
Nobody likes playing Andy Reid in week 1. Like, I'll never forget watching the Chargers' old coach. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Lynn. When
Anthony.
They did the lead up press conference, like, well, what do you think Andy's going to do in week 1? He was like, I don't know. He was like, I don't know. He was like, with Andy, it's going to be something new that we haven't seen. And so all we can do is do the best we can, read our key, said some coach stuff. But it really was the equivalent,
said some coach stuff.
Yeah, well, he really did. It's like, we just got to make sure that we're smart and disciplined and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, as opposed to the, playing defense dumb and undisciplined. But I mean, that's Andy in week 1's tough to beat. Spags in week 1 has not been terrific. So
there's that. The fact that Justin Reed, the first week of practice, says, hey, we have to get better to be ready to roll week 1, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But good for him for doing it. Doug, wonder if Rojo doesn't make the 53. No, he's on the 53 barring injury. It's not much of a question from what I understand. I've talked to multiple beat reporters that are like, yeah, they're not focusing on him. He's not making the big splash plays, but he is the backup. Dreamin', thanks, guys. Thank you, Dreamin'. Appreciate your support. As always, very much thank you. Jaden, thank you as well. Paco's down for half a season. Who do you start, Tyler Palko or Brody Croyle? The alternative is you get to bring any Chiefs halfback or wide receiver or tight end. Who you got?
Is Brody going to stay healthy? I give Brody a shot. He's got an arm on him.
Those might be, two halves of one guy. I'll take Brody too, and I'll take Tony. Thanks, Mr.
I'd take Tyler Thigpen is who I'd take.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, you know what? Change the whole offense to read option, and you just say, look, Thiggy, You got one passing option every play, but we're running RPOs all day. And Tyler Thigpen would get it done.
Somebody winks at you, tuck it and run. It's fine.
Yep.
Teak, will we be better in the red zone? For one, because of Sorensen and Neiman aren't on the field. There's an element of missed tackles that is going to improve dramatically just because of who's not on the roster. But it is a team game in the red zone, and you have a lot of rookies that are going to play. Breakdowns are going to happen. We'll see.
Yep.
Spards, thank you for the support. Going to camp on Saturday. Suggestions of where to locate. What's your favorite spot, Seth?
Well, I usually end up sitting on the hill in front of the media tent, but that's often because I'm hassling Nate and Josh and like the respectable media. Nope. I've made a decision here.
I think that was well done.
Well, some people they work for non-internet based companies, so they're more respectable.
Yeah, let's not go there.
I want to say things, but I won't because I won't.
Let me just tell you, the Broncos credentialed me this year, but I can't get into camp.
Yeah.
Not in Kansas City.
Yeah, and it's not like there's not any room in that tent. But that's neither here nor there. I actually enjoy it. Like I kind of like, I'm kind of a putz about it. I'll walk up and I'll say hi to the various people who are there. Usually the guys right up front are usually like Nate will be there, obviously, but like Herbie and Matt Derrick and like some of those guys, they're the guys that like to crowd the front. So I'll say hi to those, which Matt Derrick really shouldn't do that because he's enormous. He's such a big dude and like literally the nicest guy in the world. Like,
whole eclipse, yeah, you got to get out of the way.
He is just the nicest guy. I mean, just not a mean bone in that dude's body, but those bones are huge.
There's very few people that I have to go, sure.
Yeah, gotcha. You're like, holy cow. But so I like that hill. Really, I move around.
I do too.
And that makes my coverage of camp honestly not great for people because I don't have the time to set up shop to take videos and that kind of stuff. But it just
You're not supposed to film practice anyway.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. It's in the rules that we all signed to go in the dang thing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, you know what? I'll leave it to credentialed media to do.
There you
go. And so anyway, I like to set up shop. The bleachers are good for during the team periods, but you got to kind of anticipate where the team period is going to be. So I know this sounds like a cop out, but there's usually just enough time to get where you want to go if you move around. And I usually hit all three spots, both ends and the bleachers, depending on what drills they're running. So I would say get some water and stay mobile.
I will tell you this too. Now that they opened up the back hill, after the maybe the third or fourth period, usually they'll go to an individual where you can go see either some line one-on-ones or one-on-threes, and you can see some wide receiver corner stuff if you go to the back side of the hill. My favorite spot to start practice is right there at the corner of the bleachers where the defensive linemen attack the sled.
That's a lot of fun.
Well, with Jody, Juju, MVS, there's a lot more size on the field for 15 to play with. Do you think Andy will let him throw more 50-50 style jump balls? It feels like it to me. We've seen more in camp, and we saw what he was doing with Jody last year. There was a couple there. I think it's got to be part of the change in this offense.
I think you saw now it's different when you're throwing to Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
But because Jamar Chase that guy's so good. I mean, he's so good. But it definitely is a different skill set than he's ever had. And so I've never seen Mahomes not try to exploit a skill set on his side or a hole on the other side. So my assumption is he's going to give it a shot. And then we'll see whether that fits in with what the things that Mahomes is good at. Given that he's become very good at pretty much everything he's tried, I assume he will at that as well.
I'm with you. Reapers at 22. Scotty, thank you. Appreciate that. I think it's catching on. Justin Haas, thank you for the support. Appreciate you as well. Elks Pride, I feel like a lot of second downs in particular have been lost on 2-yard runs up the middle as the offense gets so dynamic. Why these bummer calls?
I actually have looked into the numbers on that. That gets looked at. The Chiefs actually do that. They run the ball on second down less than the vast majority of teams in the NFL. And so I don't know why they do it ever, honestly, depending on what the down and distance is. But quite often they're using it to set up a look. And then they're hoping to break one. But I know if it happens even one time during a game, I get frustrated. But there are teams, let me tell you, that do this like 10 times a game. These dinosaurs that think that running the ball is the way to win football games. Probably like fullbacks too.
Run to win. I am officially Mike Burton's burner, folks. I'm just telling you. Dean, I'm not sure what you meant, but he wants a name. I don't know. I don't know what that was in reference to. I'm way behind the chat.
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember. I didn't name someone. I think I named like a position group or something.
Okay.
I will stand by my cowardice, sir.
Good cop out. Joseph, any news on where Colin Saunders is development-wise? I haven't seen anything specific to him, but I understand he's rotating back and forth with the 2s and the 3s. They don't have a lot of depth there, so he better. Wharton, Stallworth, somebody's got to show up.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see who it is.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about him either.
Last one for night. Where's Dan been? Dan's on vacation with his family. He will be back next week. He did give you film just the other day, though, so that's in there in the queue. Go check out the channel. And Aaron says, Seth, do you have a discount code for The Athletic?
You know what? I don't. They're
Okay.
usually running some kind of deal or another, but I don't know what they're running right now.
Chiefs fan of Colorado. Love to see that, by the way. What are your thoughts on Jay Watson as at 5 or 6? Tobe likes him, and Pacheco is a possible running back 3. Running back 3 is going to be kind of a toss-up. He or McKinnon, I think, it'll depend on the day. It might depend on the week with the same rules being able to rotate off the practice squad. But Watson, I think, is definitely in position to be the 5 or 6 right now. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, the special team stuff is especially important there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it for us tonight, folks. Thanks for all your questions. Thanks for being here with us as we went through. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. That's how we grow and how you get more content from us and all of our guys. Check out Gary. Check out Dan. Now we have Seth. Like, it's half an AP reunion and half the new school. Like, it's all kinds of stuff. We got the crew. We got Sean. We got Back Talk Bros with Stevie Gooch and Aaron. We got all kinds of stuff coming for you. So be ready, be in aware, enjoy camp. I hope that you guys get out there and enjoy it while you can. Thanks for being here with us tonight. We'll catch you next time.